Okay, or the other name for this fragment is, nothing but, so fragment is a subtype of an activity, or the other name for this fragment is what? Fragment is subtype of an activity. Fragment is what? Fragment is subtype of an activity. So fragment is one of the UI component, or fragment is what? Fragment is a subtype of an activity. I'll show you an example. I'll show you, and I'll explain with that example. I'll explain you what exactly the fragment concept. Okay. So let me connect my mobile. Let's connect the mobile. So a minute. I'm connecting my mobile. I'm connecting. Is one of the UI component, or fragment is what? It's a subtype of an activity. So now, as per your knowledge, okay, as per your knowledge, each and every screen is nothing but what? One activity, right? That's what we discussed up to now. In Android, each and every screen is what? One activity. Each and every screen is nothing but one activity. But here, now you should not create the multiple activities. You should not create your project. Only you have to create one activity. You have to create in your project. Let's see why I explain you. Okay, it's taking some time. Meanwhile, I'll explain you this fragments. I'll explain you. So fragment is what? It's a subtype of an activity. Okay. So next. So basically, there are some problems with problems of creating the multiple activities. There are some problems of with creating what? Creating the multiple activities. We should not create the multiple activities. We should not create. So we had to create only one activity. We had to create. Remaining all we had to create as a fragments. We had to create. So what exactly this fragments concept is? Why it's not taking this? Okay, finally we got the preview. So in my phone, there is an app called Kotak Mahindra Bank is there. Kotak Mahindra Bank app is there in my phone. I'll explain you this fragments concept. So with this application, let's open this Kotak Bank. So I'm repeating again. In as per our knowledge up to now, each and every screen is nothing but one activity. Each and every screen is nothing but what? One activity. Okay. So here in this screen, if you see the header part here, this header part is fixed for all the screens. The header part is fixed for all the screens, right? So if you see the application here, if you see this header part in the application, if you see this header part, changing the color, take pen color to yellow. So marking here, if you see the header part, if you see here, observe the header part and footer part. This header part and footer part is common for all the screens. This header part and footer part is what? Common for all the screens. Now here, for example, I selected my Kotak, I selected. That's why we got this screen. For example, if we select this banking, if we select, banking, if we select, if we observe here, the header part is same and the footer part is same. Which content has changed? Only the body has changed. Correct or not? If you select this bill pay, in the header part, there is no any change in the header part and the footer part. Only this body is what? Body is changed. And M store services. Like if you select any option, if you select any option, if you select here, the header part and footer part will not change. It's a fixed, it's a constant, fixed. Only which one is changing here? Only the body is changing here. The header part and the footer part is not changing here. Okay. Here they use a component called fragment. Here what is the component here? This component is nothing but fragment. This component is nothing but what? A fragment. There are two main disadvantages of creating the individual activities. Imagine, as per your knowledge, each and every screen is nothing but one activity. If you consider all these things are the activities, for example, service request is one activity. Next, investments is one activity. DMAT is one activity. Like each and every screen is nothing but one activity. For example, there are two disadvantages are there. Two disadvantages are nothing but in each and every screen, we had to create this header part we had to create, and we had to create the footer part we had to create. In each and every screen, we had to create the header part we had to create, and we had to create what? The footer part also we had to create in each and every screen. These two are mandatory. If you create as a individual activities in each and every screen, we had to create this header part we had to create, and we had to create this footer part. Because of this, the first disadvantage is nothing but code duplication. What is the first main disadvantage? Code duplication, meaning in each and every activity, we had to write the logic in the header part, we had to write the logic, and we had to write the logic in footer part. So, because you had to maintain this header part and footer part logic, you had to maintain in all the activities you had to maintain. That is a main disadvantage. Code duplication is one main disadvantage of creating the individual activities. Second thing is nothing but, for example, like this, there are 100 screens are there. Like this, there are 100 screens are there. In all the 100 screens, you created as a Kotak Mahindra Bank application screen you created. How many screens total? 100 screens. For example, in future, for example, ICICI is purchased this Kotak, for example. ICICI is purchased this Kotak Mahindra Bank. So I want to replace this Kotak, I want to replace it ICICI. So XYZ name I want to change. In how many places you have to change? You have to make some changes. In all the 100 screens, you have to make some changes. There are two main disadvantages of creating the individual activities. One is code duplication. The same repeated code you have to write in multiple activities you have to write. That is one thing. Second thing is nothing but in future, for example, even if you want to modify a small content in the entire app, you have to make some changes in all the places. You have to make some changes. These are the two main disadvantages of creating what? Creating the individual activities. That's why Android is not preferred to use this creating multiple activities. For your entire project, you had to create only one activity you had to create for your entire project. Remaining all we had to create as a fragments we had to create. I repeat again. So for your entire app, we had to create only one activity you had to create. Remaining all you had to create as a fragments I had to create. Remaining all we had to create as what? As a fragments. Okay. So I hope you understand with this example. Okay. So basically some common logic is there, right? In all the screens there should be some common logic. That common logic don't write in the individual activities. Okay. The main disadvantage is nothing but what? Code duplication. And second thing is nothing but in future, even if you want to make some small changes in the application, you had to do some changes in the entire app, you had to do some changes. Okay. So these two are overcome with a fragments concept. It's a one of the UI component in Android, and fragment is subtype of an activity class. Okay. Next. So each fragment or every fragment. So basically it's a UI component. So we had to create a UI component. We had to create in the activity XML file. We had to create a fragment component. We had to create in the activity XML file. We had to create what? A fragment component had to create. Same like other attributes will configure ID. You can create this fragment component. You can create a fragment component. You can create, or the parent for this fragment is nothing but. The parent for this fragment component is nothing but frame layout is a parent for this fragment component. What is a parent for this fragment component? Frame layout. Frame layout is a parent for this fragment component. Frame layout is a parent for this fragment component. Frame layout is a parent for this fragment component. So you can create in the XML file, you can create a fragment component, you can create, or you can create what? You can create a frame layout component, you can create. You can create a fragment component, you can create. You can create a fragment component, you can create, or you can create a component called what? A frame layout component also you can create. You can create a fragment component, or you can create what? A frame layout component you can create. This is the first thing. In activity XML file, we had to create this UI component we had to create. That is one thing. Next. So each fragment is having its own life cycle. Each fragment is having its own life cycle and its own user interface. Each fragment is having its own life cycle and its own user interface. Meaning same like our activity file. For activity file, for each and every activity, we are creating XML file we are creating, and we are creating a Java file we are creating. Right? Here also the same thing. Each and every fragment, we had to create an XML file we had to create, and we had to create a Java file we had to create for each and every fragment. So each fragment is having its own life cycle and its own user interface. We had to create XML and Java. Next. In a single activity, we can create number of fragments. In a single activity, we can create what? We can create number of fragments. We can create number of fragments. Each fragment is having its own life cycle and its own user interface. Okay, so own life cycle and its own user interface. Meaning user interface will create by using XML. User interface creation will do by using XML. Will do the user interface creation. Okay, and what is the next one? Life cycle. Life cycle means we had to create the Java file. We had to create. Each fragment is having its own UI. UI will be managed by, you can create by using XML. Life cycle we had to create by using Java file will maintain, the lifecycle will maintain. Okay. Let's see what are the steps to create a fragment. Steps to create fragment. Okay. So user interface will create by using XML file. Now we'll discuss how to create this fragment. Okay. Each fragment is having its own lifecycle. The first thing is, if you want to create a fragment, if you want to create a class, with subtype of Android.app.fragment. This is the first step for creating a fragment. Create a class with subtype of Android.app.fragment is a class name. The first step to create a fragment is what? Create a class with subtype of Android.app.fragment. This is the first step. Second thing is, same like onCreate method in activity. Like how the onCreate method will be same like onCreate method in activity. How the onCreate method will be called when you start the activity. Same like onCreate method in activity. In fragment onCreateView method will be invoked first. Same like onCreate method in activity. In fragment, onCreateView method will be invoked first. onCreateView method will be invoked first. So provide the implementation for provide the implementation for onCreateView method. Okay. So same like onCreate method in a case of our activity class. Here we are having a method called what? onCreateView is a method. So let's provide the implementation for this onCreateView method. For example, I'm creating a sample fragment. I'm creating first class. For example, my fragment extends what? It should be a subtype of Android.app.fragment class. It should be a subtype of Android.app.fragment. Next, override a method called onCreateView is a onCreateView method is a return type. Sorry, public return type of this method is nothing but view object is a return type. View object. What is the method name? onCreateView is a method. onCreateView is a method. But this onCreateView method, basically you'll get three parameters that you'll get as the input. One is a layout inflator object. One is what? Layout inflator object. We know already why. I mean, what is the purpose of this layout inflator? Now, previous classes when you're discussing about the custom adapter concept, I explained what is the purpose of this layout inflator. Layout inflator class is used to convert the XML file into view object. The user interface XML file will be converted into view object by using this layout inflator class. Okay. So first parameter is a layout inflator, and second parameter is nothing but view group object. One of the input parameter for this onCreateView method is nothing but view group object is one of the input parameter. So let's specify the view group object, and the last parameter is nothing but basically you'll get a bundle object. You'll get bundle. These are the three input parameters for this method. These are the three input parameters for this method: layout inflator, view group object, and bundle object. Meaning view means nothing but you have to specify what is the user interface you wants to present on the fragment. Basically, we know how to create the user interface by using XML file. We already discussed in the previous classes. There is a class called layout inflator is a class. By using this layout inflator class, you can convert that XML user interface, you can convert into view object, you can convert. Whatever the user interface you created in XML, that XML user interface you can convert into view object, you can convert by using a class called what? By using a class called layout inflator class. Let's create the object for view. Let's create the object for this view class. View v is equals to the layout inflator object dot inflate is a method. Layout inflator object dot inflate is a method. First parameter you had to specify the XML file you had to specify, meaning which XML you want to convert into view object. We had to specify the XML file you had to specify. This is the first parameter. And second parameter is nothing but view group object had to specify. Second parameter we had to specify the view group object you had to specify in the second parameter. R.layout.xml file. Second parameter we had to specify the view group object, and third parameter we had to specify it's a bundle object. Sorry, third parameter is a boolean type. Always this boolean type will specify as a false will specify. So by using this layout inflator class, we are converting that XML user interface we are converting into view object we are converting. And finally, we had to return that view object we had to return. So this is a logic we had to. So each and every fragment contains its lifecycle and user interface, right? Here we'll create an XML file, and we are returning that view. We are converting that XML file. We are converting into view object. Return type of this on create view method is nothing but the view object, meaning nothing but user interface in which format you want to show the UI. Okay, this is a fragment creation. So create a class with subtype of fragment. Override the on create view method. Next. So from activity class we will manage the fragments, because fragments is a separate class. Fragments separate classes. By default, these fragment classes will not be invoked automatically. Explicitly we had to call those fragment class we had to call. So from activity class we will manage fragments. From activity class we will manage fragments. We'll manage fragments using the following code. From activity class we will manage fragments using the following code. So first, basically we require two classes we require. First thing is we require the object for fragment manager class object we require. So let's create the object for fragment manager. If you want to get this fragment manager object, there is a method called get fragment manager is a method. You'll get the object for fragment manager class. So these lines of code we had to write in the activity class we had to write. First we had to get the fragment manager class object we had to get. That is the first thing. And next we had to get the object for fragment transaction. Next we had to get the object for what? Fragment transaction class object we had to create. Fragment transaction is equals to fragment manager dot. There is a method called begin transaction is a method. Fragment manager dot begin transaction is a method, so that you'll get the object for what? Fragment transaction class. First we had to get the object for fragment manager, and next we had to get the object for what? Fragment transaction class object we had to get. Fragment transaction is equals to fragment manager dot begin transaction is a method. Okay. Next, this fragment transaction object dot, there are a few methods are there, like add is one method, add, replace, or remove. These are the methods. So first get the fragment manager object. Okay, and next get the object for fragment transaction. Fragment transaction is equals to fragment manager dot begin transaction is a method to get the object for fragment transaction. Transaction dot add or replace or remove are the methods. First parameter we have to specify the fragment ID we have to specify is the first parameter, and you have to specify the object of your fragment class. You have to specify what? Your fragment class name you have to specify. First we have to get the object for fragment manager class. We have to get the object. First we have to get the object for what? Fragment manager. First get the object for fragment manager, and next we are getting the object for what? Fragment transaction class object we are getting. By using the fragment manager By using the Fragment Manager class, we are getting the object for what? Fragment transaction class object we are getting. And transaction dot add or replace or remove are the methods. So first parameter specify the fragment ID, second parameter specify the fragment class name, which fragment you want to display. Then after that we had to call fragment transaction dot commit is a method. Fragment transaction dot commit is a method for committing the fragment. We'll manage the fragments using the following code. So by using these lines of code in your activity, we'll manage fragments. We'll manage. Okay. And the last thing, this fragments concept is introduced from Android 3.0 version. Android 3.0. So the minimum version to use fragments is the minimum version to use fragments is what? So the minimum version to use fragments is Android 3.0 is the minimum version. The minimum version to use fragments is what? Android 3.0 is the minimum version to use the fragments concept. Okay. So now let's see. We'll create a simple example we'll create for demonstrating this fragments topic. We'll create a simple example. So I want to create an application I want to create. This is my requirement in the header part. So I want to create 3 buttons I want to create in the header part here. I want to create 3 buttons I want to create in the header part. One is a home, and second thing is gallery and contact us. Like this, I want to create 3 buttons I want to create. Okay. And here I want to create a UI component called Fragment Component I want to create. And in the bottom of the screen, I want to display this message. I want to display like so. I want to display this message. I want to display in the bottom of the screen. This is a requirement. Okay. And here I want to create a component called what? Fragment component. I want to create a UI component called Fragment. Okay. Here we created 3 buttons. We created. Now let's configure the click event for these 3 buttons. Let's, for example, when user clicks the home button, display a home fragment here. So when user clicks home button, so we'll display what? A home fragment will display on the screen. Home. Like just for demonstration, I want to create 3 buttons I am creating. Home, gallery, and contact us. Okay. So I created 3 buttons I created. Home, gallery, and contact us. I created 3 buttons I created. So when user clicks the home button, so display home fragment on the screen. When user select the home button, display what? Display a home fragment on the screen. Okay. When user select the gallery button, display a gallery fragment. When user select the home button, display a home fragment. When user select the gallery button, display a gallery fragment. When user select the gallery button, display a gallery fragment. And when user select the contact us button, display a contact us screen on the fragment. When user selects the contact us button, display a contact us fragment on the screen. Okay, this is a requirement. We'll create a fragment component. We'll create 3 buttons in the header part. So home, gallery, and contact us. When user clicks the home button, display a home fragment on the screen. a gallery fragment on the screen, and contact us fragment on the screen. Okay, this is a requirement now. Now we'll see how to do this one. Here we'll create a fragment component. We'll create, and in the bottom of the screen, I want to display this message: copyrights. This header part and footer part should not be changed. Okay, only the body has to be changed. So home fragment, gallery fragment, and contact us fragment. For each and every fragment, we had to create what? Again, we had to create a XML file. We had to create for each and every fragment, and we had to create a Java file. We had to create for each and every fragment. XML file and Java file. But by default, this fragment class will not display by default. By default, these fragment classes will not be displayed by default. Explicitly, we had to call them by using the fragment manager and fragment transaction classes. We'll replace these fragments. We'll replace. Okay, this is application requirement. We'll create 3 buttons and display that particular fragment screen when you select the button. Okay, let's create a project. Yeah, so all the videos are uploaded. Um, the latest videos up to now, whatever we discussed, whatever sessions I recorded, all the recorded sessions I uploaded into the drive folder, and already added the drive folder to you. Okay, just check it once. And one more thing also, I'll upload is class examples. There is a zip folder I'm placing here in the same drive folder called class examples. Meaning, what are the examples we are discussing in the everyday classroom? So even that examples, all the examples are available in this drive folder. Okay, class examples. I'm moving this drive folder also. I'm moving this folder also. I'm moving to this drive, shared drive folder. Okay, all the classroom examples, whatever we discussed and what we are going to discuss, all the examples are available in this GIF file, class examples. Okay, these are the new videos. Let's create a project. Start a new Android Studio project. Specify the project name. I'm creating the project as the name of the project is Fragments Test is a project name. I'm creating a project called Fragments Test is a project name. Fragments Test. Next. Next. So take an empty activity here. Empty activity. Next. And finish. So open your activity XML file, open the main activity underscore main.xml. So open this XML file. Here, first we'll take the main UI group as linear layout will take. The main UI group will take as linear layout will take. This is the first thing. We'll take the main UI group as linear layout, and don't require this tools attribute. Width and height is required, and remaining all the attributes is not required. You can remove all the attributes, you can remove. Okay. And for linear layout, additionally we have to apply one more attribute you have to apply, that is orientation is the attribute you have to specify. So orientation is specified as vertical is the orientation I specified. I created linear layout, linear layout component I created, and what is the main orientation I specified as a vertical. Okay. Next, inside this linear layout, I want to create one more linear layout because in a single row, I want to create 3 buttons. I want to create in a single row. Width is match parent. Height is, let's take it's 0 dp because I want to apply the weight. So I want to apply the weight property I want to apply for this. So here, this is 0.1. I want to apply the weight property I want to apply. This is what is the weight? It's 0.1 is the weight for this one, and 0.8 is the weight for this fragment component. 0.1 and 0.8 is the weight for this fragment component, and again 0.1 is the weight for this text to be component. Okay. So we'll create by applying the weight properties, we'll design this UI, and in a single row, basically in a single row, you want to create 3 buttons. We want to create in a single row. That's why let's specify the orientation as horizontal is the orientation. Let's apply the weight property. Weight is equals to 0.1 is the weight. 0.1 is the weight of this linear layout. Now we'll see what is a. We'll have to create 3 button components. We have to create inside this linear layout. Next, create a UI component called either fragment or the frame layout. Better rather than using a fragment component, because if we create a fragments, we are getting some issues. We are getting, that's why rather than using the fragments concept, fragment component, use a component called frame layout, because a frame layout is a parent for the fragment component. So in the XML, we can create a UI component called what? Frame layout is a component. Let's specify the match parent attribute. And what is the height? Height is, you want to apply the weight property you want to apply. So let's make it 0 dp and apply the weight property. Weight is equals to 0.8 is a weight. 0.8 is a weight of this frame layout. And we require this component, we require into a Java code. So let's configure the ID. I specified as a frame 1 is ID I specified. A frame layout 1 is ID I configured. Next, below of this frame layout, below of the frame layout, we want to create one more button component. We want to create button or text view. Let's text view component. Just I want to display that message I want to display. So QX 2016. Height is 0 dp specified. Let's apply the weight property. Weight is equals to 0.1. And what is the text you want to display? Display this message QX. So message you want to display at the bottom of the screen. Copy that to QX. Okay. So what is the text size? The 20 sp is the text size specified. Now if you see the design here, so to show you how it will display on the screen. The header part, we created a linear layout component we created. In the header part, we created a linear layout component we created in the header part. Then after that, we created a frame layout we created. Then after that, we created what? A text view component we created. Let's apply the gravity property for this. Gravity is equals to what? Center. Android colon gravity is equals to what? Center property applied. Okay. So now here in the header part, we create a frame layout component we created, and in the header part linear layout, we had to create three buttons. We had to create in this linear layout. In this header part linear layout, we had to create three button components. We had to create. Let's create three button components. Width first make it 0 dp. Okay, and height let's specify as match parent. Width is 0 dp. Height I'm specifying as match parent. I'm specifying. What is a weight property? Weight is 0.33 is a weight. And what is the text you want to display on the screen? Text I want to display this. Home is the text I want to display. And what is the text style and all? Let the bold color. Let's configure the click event also at a time. On click is equals to I'm calling a method called home is the method name I'm calling. Okay. Like this, we want to create three buttons. We want to create in a single row. Home, gallery, and contact us. Just for sample, we are creating three buttons. Home, next, home, gallery, and contact us. Home, gallery, and contact us. So we create three buttons we created, and even we configured the click event also we configured for these three buttons: home, gallery, and contact us. We create a frame layout, and in the bottom of the screen we are displaying this message: copyrights to the browser. Sorry, copyrights to QX2016. Now here, when user clicks the home button, I want to display a home fragment. I want to display on frame layout. And when user select the gallery button, I want to display a gallery fragment, contact us fragment on the frame layout. Okay. So we already configured the click event. We already configured. We already configured the click event. We already configured for these buttons. We already configured what? The click event we already configured. Now let's create these methods in the activity class. This home, gallery, and contact us. These methods will configure in the activity class. Will configure these methods. So here, let's create the methods. Public void home is a fragment, which is taking the view object as the input parameter for this one. Home. Home is one fragment. Home is one button we created. Gallery. Next, what is the next one? Contact us. So these are the buttons we created, and even we configured the click event also we configured for these buttons. Okay. Now here, our requirement is when user select the home button, we had to display a fragment component we had to display to the user. This home fragment we had to display to the user. When user select the gallery button, we had to show what? Gallery fragment, contact us fragment. Okay, so we had to create a fragments we had to create now. How many fragments we had to create? Three fragments for home, gallery, and contact us. Meaning we had to create a three XML files we had to create and three Java files we had to create. Okay, first let's create the XML file. We'll see what is the UI will present. Select this resource folder. In resource, you can find a folder called layout is a folder name. In resource, you can find a folder called layout is a folder. In this layout folder, first create an XML file, a layout resource file. Let's create an XML file for this and specify what is XML file name. XML file name is home fragment is XML file name. What is XML file name? Home fragment is XML file name, home underscore fragment. Specify what is the class name. I'm specifying the class name as relative layout is a class name. Home fragment, and the root element is what? Relative layout I'm taking, or you can take a linear layout also. There is no any. I'm creating a fragment I'm creating called home fragment. XML file I'm creating. Okay. Now here, let's design what is the user interface you want to display. First, I want to apply the background color for this. For the main linear layout, I want to apply a background color I want to apply for this one. Let's apply a background for this. Background is equals to some color I want to display. Some background color. A red color I'm displaying as a background for this a linear layout. I'm setting what? The red color as a background I'm setting for this XML file, linear layout. So here, what is the text you want to display? I want to display text here. Let's create a text view component with a large text. With this match parent, height is wrap content. I want to display text. I want to display here. Text is equals to, for example, this is a home fragment, right? Home fragment. What is the text is style? Bold. What is the text is size? 30 SPI specified text size. Just for demonstration, we created a small, we created a simple XML file we created which contains a text view component. That's it. It's a home fragment. It's what? It's a home fragment. There is a component called gravity. Center is specified. Okay. This is one XML file, home fragment XML file. Like this, you require two more XML files you required for this. What I'm doing is just I'll copy this XML file, I'll copy rather than creating again. So copy the XML file and place the XML file in the layout folder. Just only change the XML file name here. It's a gallery fragment. Just change the text in place of home fragment to gallery fragment, and I'm changing the background color also. I'm changing here. I specified the background color as green color is the background I specified. Gallery fragment, home fragment, and gallery fragment. Next, I have to create one more XML file. I have to create the layout folder, contact us fragment, home fragment, gallery fragment, and contact us fragment. What is the background color for this? A red color, green color. Contact us fragment. Okay, I created three fragments XML files I created. Just simply we are displaying a message we are displaying on the screen. A home fragment, gallery fragment, and contact us fragment. Home fragment, gallery fragment, and contact us fragment. Okay. Okay, now we created fragment XML files we created. Now we created the fragment XML files we created, and next we had to create the fragment Java files I had to create. Next we had to create what? The fragment Java files I had to create next. So we had to create a fragment Java file. Let's create a Java class. Let's create a Java class. Specify the class name. For example, home fragment is a Java class name. Home fragment. What is the first step? The class should be subtype of what? Extends fragment. This is the first step. We had to create a class. We had to create with subtype of fragment is a class name. This is the first step. And I told you, right, it contains a method. And while you are importing a fragment, just be careful here because there are two classes or in two packages the fragment is available. See, one is available in the android.app.fragment. Second thing is available in android.support.v4.fragment. Android.support.v4.app. Basically, if you take the this support library fragment, which will support fragment will support even in less than 3.0 versions. Okay, but you don't have to take this support fragment file because now in the present market, all the devices are which are higher than 3.0 version. So you don't need to worry about this. What is the version of this device? Okay, let's take this android.app.fragment. Basically, this support fragment is nothing but if we take this support fragment, even it will support in the less than 3.0 versions also it will support if we take this support fragment. But if you take in the present market, all the devices in the present market are which are higher than the 3.0 version. Okay, so that's why we don't require this support library file. We don't require. We require this android.app.fragment. This is the first step. Next, we had to override a method called onCreateView method. We had to override. We had to override a method called what? OnCreateView is the method name. Let's override the onCreateView method. Already it contains a method called onCreateView. Just if you are typing, automatically you'll get that auto completion support you will get. So we had to provide the implementation for on create view method. We had to provide the implementation. Return type of this method is what? So view object is a return type. Just select that method on create view method. On create view. So return type is what? It's a view object. Return type of this method is what? It's a view object. Okay. Now here we create XML files we already created. Home fragment, gallery fragment, and contact us fragment. So first what we'll do is let's convert that XML file into a view object. View v is equals to your layout inflator object dot. There is a method called inflate is a method. Inflator dot inflate is a method. We had to specify three parameters we had to specify for this layout inflator. First thing is we had to specify the XML file you had to specify. Which XML file you want to show. r dot layout dot home fragment. First thing we are specifying the XML file we are specifying. There is a first parameter, and second parameter is a view group object. Second parameter is a view group, so we have to specify this. Container object we have to specify the second parameter. Already one of the input parameter for this one is nothing but container. Okay, by using this layout inflator class, you can convert that XML file, you can convert into view object. Last parameter is a boolean type. Basically, even in the specification also they know where they specified. They specified only just make it as what? False. The third parameter is what? It's a false. Now the return type of this on create view method is nothing but view object is a return type. That's why we converted that XML user interface, we converted into view object. We had to return that view object. We had to return what? Return the view object. This is one thing. Home fragment. This is one thing. Home fragment. Like this, we had to create two more classes. We had to create a gallery fragment and contact us fragment. Like this, we had to create what? Two more fragments, a gallery fragment and contact us fragment. Let's copy this home fragment and place in the same project. Let's take a gallery fragment. Gallery fragment, extends fragment. Specify the fragment XML file name. Gallery fragment is XML file. Next, place in the same package. Home fragment, gallery fragment, and the third thing is our contact us fragment. Home fragment, gallery fragment, and contact us fragment. r.layout. Contact us fragment. Okay, so we created three fragment classes. We created home fragment, gallery fragment, and what is the next one? Contact us fragment. Okay, now we created the fragment classes also. We created XML files we created, and even the fragment Java class also we created. Next, for example, if user clicks the home button, when user clicks the home button, we had to display a home fragment. We had to display. When user select the gallery button, display a gallery fragment and contact us fragment. Okay, before that, for example, if user, okay, we'll write the logic here. First, globally, we'll create the object for fragment manager, because for managing the fragments, we require two class objects. We require one is the fragment manager object is one thing. One thing we require the object for fragment manager. The second thing is we have to get the object for fragment transaction. So these two class objects are required. One is what? The fragment manager, and second thing is the fragment transaction. We require the object for these two classes. The object is required fragment manager and fragment transaction. So in onCreate method, let's get the object for fragment manager class. Fragment manager is equals to, there is a method called get fragment manager is a method. Get fragment manager is a method. Okay, this is the first thing. Get the object for fragment manager class by calling a method called what? Get fragment manager. See here, our requirement is when user clicks the home button, display a home fragment. When user clicks the home button, display a home fragment. When user select the gallery button, display gallery fragment. Contact us fragment. If user is not selected any button, he is not selected the home button or gallery or contact us, which fragment you want to display by default? Which fragment you want to display by default, we have to specify that one. So by default, will display home fragment will display by default. If user is not selected any button, by default will display what? A home fragment will display by default. Okay. So here, let's create the object for fragment transaction. Let's create the object for fragment transaction is equals to fragment manager dot. There is a method called begin transaction is a method. First, we got the object for fragment manager. First, we got the object for fragment manager. Next, we had to get the object for fragment transaction class object we had to get. First, we had to get the object for fragment manager, and next we had to get the object for fragment transaction object we had to get. Next, fragment transaction dot. There are few methods are there: add, replace, or remove. These are the three methods in the fragment transaction. We specified. I mean, we are going to specify when user select the home button, display home fragment, gallery fragment, contact us fragment. By default, which fragment you want to display? By default, you have to specify that one by using a method called add is a method. Initially in the onCreate method, transaction.begin transaction, fragment transaction.add is a method. First parameter you have to specify your fragment or frame layout ID r.id.frame1 frame layout 1, comma your fragment class name. By default, I want to display a home fragment. I want to display by default. So let's create the object for your home fragment class. And transaction.commit is a method to commit the fragment. Get the object for this fragment manager. Get the object for the fragment manager. Initialize the fragment transaction, and we are specifying by default. That's why we are using method called add method. By default, display this home fragment. Okay, transaction.commit. Okay. Now when user select the home button, we had to display the home fragment. We had to display here. So let's create the object for fragment. Let's copy these three lines of code and place in the home method. I mean the home button. Get the fragment manager object. So in place of this add method, we use a method called replace is a method. When user select the home button, okay, we are replacing the fragment. We are replacing transaction.replace a fragment ID, and second parameter is a fragment class name. Which fragment class you want to display? Home fragment we are displaying. And when user select the gallery button, get the fragment manager object and specify gallery fragment and contact us. The same thing in contact us also. New contact us fragment. We are displaying home fragment, gallery, and contact us fragments. But here we should not use the add method because already it contains a fragment. So we have to use what? A replace method we have to use. Instead of add, we have to use a method called what? A replace method, so I have to use. First we had to use the add method because at that time the frame layout doesn't contain any fragments. That's why we are using the add method first time. So then after that, when user select any particular button, already the fragment contains some frame, that some class already defined in that one. So we are replacing that one. Replace with home fragment, gallery fragment, and contact us fragment. Now let's run the application and see if this application is working or not. Fragments example. So user select the home button, display home fragment. When I select the gallery button, show a gallery fragment. When user select the contact us, display contact us fragment. Home, gallery, and contact us. Home fragment, gallery fragment, and contact us fragment. Okay, these are fragments. This is what? A fragment example. Now the header part and footer part will not change. This is fixed. Only this body is only changing here. Okay, this is the fragment component. And one more thing, if fragment contains any UI component, where we have to write the logic to configure the events. If fragments contain any UI component, for example, the home fragment contains a button. For example, this home fragment contains a button component. This home fragment contains a button called click me is a button. This home fragment contains a button called what? Click me is a button in the home fragment. The home fragment contains a button called what? Click me is a button in the home fragment. When user select this click me button, what is the logic? So I want to execute some logic I want to execute. Where this button is available? In the home fragment. In case of activity, we know that. In case of activity, we know how to configure the click event and the different events are there. But if fragment contains any UI component, where you have to write the logic for that particular UI components. Meaning, for example, home fragment is there. This home fragment contains a button. Imagine this home fragment. This home fragment contains a button. Match parent, wrap content, and what is the text you want to display? What is the text you want to display? For example, click me is a text I specify. Click me. Okay. So I create a button called click me is a button I created. Click me. Click me button I created. Let's configure the ID for this. ID I'm specifying as B1 is ID I configured. B1 is ID I configured for this button. If you see the design here, okay. Now the fragment contains a button component. Fragment contains a UI component called button. Now I want to write some logic when user clicks this button. In case of activity, we know that. In case of activity, you know how to configure a click event for a button. Simply, we'll configure. Simply, we'll configure an on-click attribute. We'll configure in the XML file. The same method name we'll configure in the activity file. We'll configure the same method. Okay. So here in the home fragment class, in that particular fragment class, in that particular fragment class, in that particular fragment class, what we had to do is we had to get the button component. Here we create a button component we created in the fragment, right? So we had to write that logic for the particular UI component. We had to write the logic in the same fragment class only we had to write. So let's open the home fragment class. After this view object initialization, now we have to get the button component. We have to get button v1 is equals to button of, use this view object dot find v by id is a method. Button is equals to button of v, mean this view object dot, what is the method name? Find v by id is a method. Specify the id of that particular component. R dot id dot b1 is a, okay. Get the button component from the individual XML file. Okay, get the button component from the individual fragment. Get the button component from the individual in that fragment class, particular fragment class. Let's configure the click event for this button. So button object dot there is a method called set on click listener is a method. Button object dot set on click listener is a method. Button object dot set on click listener. To this on click listener, we have to specify the object of on click listener class object have to specify. So let's create the object of on click listener. Let's create the object of what? On click listener. And write the logic here. So if you want to get any UI component, if you want to get from the fragment XML file, use this view object. Because if you use this find view by ID method, it is going to search for the UI component in the activity XML. That's why explicitly we have to specify was this UI component is available in this fragment XML file. That's why we are specifying the view object. We are specifying view object dot find view by ID. Okay, we configured the on click listener. We configured v1 dot set on click listener. Let's write here whatever the message you want to display. If get application context also will not work. So basically we require the object we required of our activity class. So use get activity is a method. So if you use get activity method, you will get the activity object you will get, because we are in a fragment class. But here it is asking the activity object, it is asking here. That's why I'm calling a method called what? Get activity is a method. So it will get the activity object will get. Specify what is the message you want to display. I'm specifying a message as don't click me boss, comma length underscore long dot show is the method. Dot show is the method. Length underscore long dot show is a method. Okay. So when user clicks that particular button, we are displaying a message. We are displaying to the user, that is don't click me boss is the message we are showing. Don't click me boss. Okay. Now let's run the application. Let's run the application. So when you click on the button, we are displaying what? Toast message we are displaying don't click me boss. Okay. Select this click me button. So you got a message, you got don't click me boss. Don't click me boss. So in this on click is working fine. Okay. So my intention is you have to understand if fragment contains any UI component, where we have to write the logic for that fragment UI components. Okay. So for example, this click me button we created in the fragment XML file we created. In the fragment XML file we created button we created. We configured the event in that particular fragment class only we are configuring. So before getting that UI component, use this view object, because in the view object we initialize which XML file you want to display. By using the view object, we are getting the UI component we are getting, and we configure the events we configure. Okay. So this is about the fragments. So in your project, you should not create the multiple activities you should not create in your project. You had to create only one activity you had to create, and remaining all you had to create as a fragment you had to create. Advantage is nothing but uh, that code reusability. Code reusability is a main advantage in case of fragments concept. Thus, repeated code we don't need to write the same code you can reuse in multiple.